Hello everyone, and welcome back to DMG. Today you're looking at a 25-year-old camera that shoots on magnetic media. And coincidentally, that's also what I have to show you. Let me know if you hate it, but I thought it would be a fun little thing to use a mini DV camera just to add some, just to add to the vibe, I guess, for some of my less important shots. Don't worry, you're still gonna see my good Sony for most of the video. Today we're looking at a camera that shoots on a magnetic media that was supposed to be the future of floppy disk type media, but it never really caught on, leading this camera to be the only one to ever use it. That media would of course be the magneto-optical super floppy, the LS120 SuperDisk from iMation. And that camera, the one and only Panasonic PV-SD4090. Now, I was going to make a video on this a little while ago, but none other than LGR beat me to the punch. And there's nothing worse as a YouTuber who covers odd, obsolete pieces of hardware than having someone else who does it a whole lot better talk about the same thing days before you can. So I'm reshooting this video, I'm adding a little more, and I'm kind of putting my own spin on the PV-SD4090 because half of you have probably already seen the LGR video. First of all, quick history. So the SD4090 did not invent the floppy disk camera. The floppy disk camera was around throughout the late 90s. The Sony FD Mavica was the most popular and expansive series that probably most of you would recognize the name. But as camera sensor resolutions grew, it became less and less practical to put images onto 1.44 megabytes. So for context, this is a 1.3 megapixel camera, as it very, very proudly advertises there on the top. It's 1.3 megapixels, and on the highest quality setting, you can shoot about 5 images on a 1.44 megabyte floppy disk, and they also take several seconds per image to save. However, flash media wasn't a good alternative. That was outlandishly expensive. So the SuperDisk being 120 megabytes was the best solution. A 128 megabyte Sony memory stick or compact flash card would have cost the price of your camera. So using a magnetic media, but a significantly larger one, so it delivered unmatched capacity at a significantly lower price at the expense of the camera being a giant goddamn brick. So this is not unique to the SD4090. It is a problem all floppy disk cameras face, including the Sony FD Mavicas, as mentioned earlier. The SuperDisk Drive dictates the size of the camera. This is a laptop SuperDisk drive, and therefore it is the thickness of a laptop SuperDisk drive. I've opened this camera, almost all of it is just the drive. Leading to there not even being space in the body for the lens and the battery, which have to be on their own separate parts here. I'll get to that battery and, of course, that lens later. But first of all, just quick overview, quick peek around the sides. So back is pretty bare. You just have a D-pad, a very good D-pad, by the way, and 3 buttons to change your recording quality, open the general settings menu, and quick setting for flash. Very big speaker, sounds excellent, because this can record audio and video. I'll get to that later. Great grips. And you do need grips for holding something this big. So, I mean, big rubber grip on the front, and these textured areas on the back, perfect for putting your thumbs. So, despite it weighing a couple pounds and being so big and chunky, it's extremely comfortable to hold. Your wide and telephoto switch, and On top, your microphone, a proud advertisement for the SuperDisk format, and the switch for the 4 recording modes. That's basically your auto and program mode, as you'd see on any other camera. Playback, look at your files, and PC. Now, with a special cable, you can plug this into a computer with USB, and it'll be a SuperDisk drive. But there's one very big problem. Panasonic never released drivers for Windows NT. This only works on Windows 9X and 2000. This only works on DOS-based Windows versions. It won't even work on Windows XP, so unfortunately, I had to buy a SuperDisk drive. And you probably will too, unless you want to boot up a Windows 98 computer every time you want to look at your files. So that's a huge downside. It would be so convenient to have USB compatibility on this if they'd bothered to release a driver for Windows XP at least. But there's not a whole lot more I can show you without powering it up. Well, I said I was going to get to that battery later, and I sure will. Came with a battery that was completely dead, because of course it was. It's 25 years old, lithium battery, and they do not age well. The camera has a input on the side for DC 7.2 volts, and you know what gives you 7.2 volts with a pretty solidly high capacity? 6 nickel metal hydride rechargeable AA's. So that was a very affordable solution because I already had those for my other cameras. So I have 2800 milliamp hour batteries, so that's actually a higher capacity than the original lithium battery. So that was my cheap cop-out solution. It was this $5 battery holder and just a cable that I soldered together, and now it works. So with it all plugged in, we'll flip it over first to the record mode, and little screen comes on. It checks for a disk, as evidenced by the access light. Then it prompts you to open the lens cover. And remember how I said the lens can't fit in the body? It sure can't. You have to open this cover, at which point the lens extends out of the body, and it's not even like held there by a gear. You can just bounce it around. It's such a silly little guy. But now we get a live preview, and actually an exceptionally fast and responsive live preview. So here we go. This is the fastest and most responsive preview screen I've ever seen on an old camera. This is truly remarkable. Usually the pass-through from the sensor isn't nearly this fast. It typically refreshes pretty slowly, and you can't look through it as if it was a viewfinder. This you can, and this you have to, because there is no viewfinder. It's just brick. This display is your only way of getting your bearings. But it has 3 times optical zoom, and it has digital zoom past that point. And for the optical zoom, it retracts that lens back into the case and pushes it out. Looks nice and silly. But first, let's put in a regular, ordinary 1.44 megabyte floppy disk. So, boom, there it goes into the drive. And you can hear that. And sure enough, only 5 shots of super high quality. So that is why the 128 megabyte SuperDisk is really necessary, because on 1.3 megapixels, you only get 5 pictures. And then it's saving here. Yeah, that was like 6 seconds of it saving. I'll let you watch it take a picture and save this time. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. My estimate was off. Nearly 10 seconds of it saving a picture onto a regular floppy disk. Now if we go into play mode and we format this floppy disk, which you can do from play mode and play mode only. There's my horrible picture. Delete. It's under the delete menu, format, and boom, it'll format your disk. Works with the floppies and super disks, of course. I love the sounds this camera makes, and you can feel that drive too. Anyway, we'll flip back over to recording and change our mode. So you get 11 high quality photos, 17 normal, and 17 with digital zoom. The normal quality is 640 by 480, and the super high quality is the native 1.3 megapixel of the sensor, which I think is 1152 by 864, something like that. But there are a couple more modes that are worth mentioning. This one is the burst mode, which takes 640 by 480 photos, but stores them in a memory buffer, and you can take about 10 of them in super fast succession before it dumps them all to the floppy disk. And it's about every half second it takes a picture, and we'll wait for it to save. It takes up to 30 seconds to save your burst photos, because it is saving quite a few photos, of course. Now, of course, regular photos and the burst mode are a feature that most cameras of this era have. However, this Panasonic has a feature that I've never seen from any other. It has the hardware to process MPEG videos and audio. So of course that means video recording, and I will show that to you in a second. Oh, we have 6 photos left, so it took 11 in the burst. However, that also means if we flip it over to manual recording, we can go into the menu here, in which you can also adjust the iris and turn on time lapse. But the super unique setting here is that you can enable audio. Now, turning on audio means it records a short 5-second audio clip with your photo. Now, this significantly increases the space that each picture takes and the time it needs to save, so you could take far fewer pictures per disc. For example, we had 4 fine quality photos before turning on audio. Now we have 1, but when I turn on audio mode, it'll record 5 seconds of audio after the picture is taken. And it'll save both the photo and a video with the entire duration of it being that still picture, but the audio overlaid underneath it. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like and sounds like. So I'll take my picture has been taken, and I'm going to keep talking, and it'll record that sound through its microphone here, save it to the disk, and then I can play it back for you right now. Time to eject our disk, and now I get to show you the awesome floppy drive. So it is a fully electronic eject. It's not like the mechanical chunky floppy drive eject. No, it's a fully electronic eject, which is absolutely rad. I've never seen any floppy drive like that. I've put in a 120 megabyte SuperDisk now. We had 11 fine quality photos on a floppy. And now look at how many we have on a SuperDisk. 976. So we'll go back to our super fine quality. 480 photos on a SuperDisk, and 1537 640 by 480. So that's the advantage, of course, of using SuperDisk. And I can shoot a couple videos on this now that I have a SuperDisk installed. So let me zoom in on my little camcorder here. So I am now taking a video on the PV-SD4090. They are maximum about 10 seconds, and then they save to the floppy once it's shot about 10 seconds of video. These don't look good. These look, in fact, really bad. At this time, only cameras that were actually meant to record video shot good video. And that is because still cameras, the media on which they recorded just wasn't fast enough to record consistent video. And oftentimes the processors weren't fast enough to process video compression real time, because God knows that video had to be compressed. It's stored in a memory buffer, and then once that buffer fills up, it's dumped to disk. Pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. I'll do another video for you here just so you get more than one perspective. But that's what it looks like. And what's interesting is it actually slows down the live preview on the display to be the frame rate at which it is shooting the video. Now, I don't know if that is an intentional choice or if that's just lag, because the processor is being used to compress the video. But whichever it is, it actually works pretty well. Let me show you what that looks like. So waving my hand, and when I start the video, you can see the frame rate drop on the built-in display to what that actually looks like. So photos with sound, that's unique. Video, that's pretty unique, but it isn't the only camera that can do those. There are a couple other old cameras in my collection that will do both photos with a little audio clip and shoot videos. But what this can do that no other camera in my collection can, we'll get it back onto the super fine quality. So you can record a time lapse with sound, which is so cool. So of course that means I'll set it up here and start that time lapse. So first photo taken, and it's doing sound now. So that means every specified interval it'll take a picture, but also records sound. And again, no other cameras that can do that in my collection. I've actually brought it to a couple concerts and tried out that feature, and it's been really cool, taking a short 5-second sound sample every minute. And I did that back before I owned SuperDisks, so I would just have this stack of floppies at the concert, where I was a sound engineer, by the way. But the ability to do a time lapse with sound is a very unique ability. Speaking of those time lapses, I'll show you some examples of what its time lapses look like, along with some sample photos. Now, I was noticing that the discs weren't filling up quite as fast as they should be, and that is because it overshoots the interval a tiny bit. It consistently overshoots by about a second. So it's not egregious by any means, not in the slightest. But it is an interesting thing to note that why does it count exactly 61 seconds instead of 60? I would think it doesn't account for the time needed to focus when it does the time lapse. So instead of taking the picture exactly every 60 seconds, it starts focusing every 60 seconds. So that means you get that delay. So that manifests as you see the second hand in this clock rotating, which it shouldn't be. If it's taking exactly 60 seconds, it should stay in the same place. Now that we're done shooting, we need that disc back. So, unfortunately, because the camera does use a fully electronic floppy drive, that does mean you have to turn it on to eject the disc. So I'll put it in play mode, and there we go. And then shut it right back off. So that's the downside of the fully electronic floppy drive. The other is, of course, reliability, but it's awesome, so I don't care. It reminds me, in fact, of this mini DV camcorder in the way that it ejects the disc being remarkably overcomplicated and probably extremely prone to failure. Now, of course, we're going to need something a little different to actually look at these files. Pulling out the big guns again, because I have a wide-angle lens on this camera, which will be needed. I had to get a SuperDisk Drive. There it is. Now, I have some advice for prospective SuperDisk Drive buyers. Don't get the internal ones for sale on eBay. What you do, the SuperDisk method, the SuperDisk strat, if you will, is you buy the iMation external drive for Mac. It requires a special proprietary USB cable that is like $25. So no one buys these drives because they think you need that cable to use it. You don't. What you do is you strip it down, you open the drive, and inside is just a regular IDE SuperDisk drive. So you open that, you pull the drive out, and boom, you have an internal SuperDisk drive that is in better condition because it's been enclosed in a plastic box for 25 years, and it's like a quarter of the price that the IDE ones sell for on eBay. So that is what you do if you're buying a SuperDisk drive. Now, I did say it uses IDE. That's not like a mistake. I meant to say that. It does use IDE. It doesn't use the floppy connector because a floppy controller won't recognize it. Now, not all IDE controllers will recognize this either. I tried some external USB to IDE, like hard drive controllers, and those did not work with the SuperDisk drive. So, hence, it's installed internally in here, plugged into the NVIDIA IDE disk controller on the motherboard, and that recognizes it just fine. But you will need to make sure you have a SuperDisk compatible board / BIOS if you're going to be using one of these. I'm saying this as if anyone is going to buy a fucking SuperDisk drive. But this drive sounds really cool. It sounds like a CD drive when it's seeking, because of course it uses a laser to align the heads with the tracks, but it sounds like a floppy drive when it's reading and writing. It's awesome, and a nice thing about SuperDisk drives is that they actually write floppies faster. So this writes at like 200 to 400 kilobytes per second, which is not all that fast by modern standards, but for floppy disk standards, that is utterly astronomical. It will fill a whole floppy disk in under 10 seconds because it actually writes to 1.44 megabyte floppies faster. And yes, they are double-sided, so each side of this disk is 60 megabytes. Should have mentioned that. But SuperDisks are awesome. The Panasonic camera is awesome. And now let's look at some photos from it. 4090, here we go. So, I've taken some still photos. Oh, this was a burst that I did of my dog on the floor. So you can see that it takes those photos in super quick succession. There's the little fellow, there's the little guy. 640 by 480. That's the standard / burst quality. I love my 1920 by 1200 monitor, but it's annoying to record and put on YouTube. There we go. So it's 640 by 480. There's the guy, 1280 by 960. That's the standard 1.3 megapixel resolution. So, unfortunately, it doesn't look all that good, even by old camera standards. And reviews of it at the time said this. It's grainy, but worst of all, it's washed out. The color portrayal is just flat. Like you can see here, it's just dull. It's just gray and sad, and it makes you cry when you look at it. Like that bright red roof just is not conveyed well. And the contrast between the sun and darkness just Those are called shadows. I know that word. Those are called shadows. It just doesn't look right. Its low light is decent because its flash is very bright. This is also in daytime, so it wasn't super dark, but it's not too extra grainy. There is that one pixel, and this starts to happen with CCD cameras after a while. Some of my old CCDs do this, but there's like, I won't call it a dead pixel, but there it is. It just shows up strangely at night. It's just super bright. And there's that same pixel in that same place. So yes, I guess it is a dead pixel. Dog. This is a horrible picture. This looks awful. Okay, the contrast between these two pictures, shot of the same subject, probably 15 seconds apart, in the exact same lighting. It looks like that might have been shot with flash. We'll see if it was. I think it'll tell us. Flash. Yes, so that was shot with flash, and that wasn't. Okay, that might be the reason, but that contrast is crazy. It looks like a whole different camera. That still, this is one of the best pictures shot on the 4090, and it still doesn't look all that good. Same washed out colors, and just the clarity of the background objects just is not good. This one, that looks good. That's a pretty good photo. This one isn't. And again, these two were taken probably 40 feet apart, same time of day, same lighting. So your results seriously differ. That's a pretty good one in the foreground. The background is too bright, it's too washed out. And then I walked forward about 4 feet and then took the picture again, and it looks a little better. More close-ups. It just does not succeed with macro. And again, this is the highest quality. Dog again. Oh, that's another burst of the fan. That's an exceptional looking macro. Again, that looks like a whole different camera. So, again, the difference from picture to picture is astonishing. Sometimes it looks quite good for its age. And then you look at the next photo, literally the next photo that you take under the same lighting of the same subject, and it looks terrible. Here's a B burst. And, I mean, even the 640 by 480, you can still tell what's going on. It doesn't look too bad. Another dog burst. I shot a lot of these dog bursts. Oh, here I am, looking like a goddamn jabroni with my silly little battery pack. That's a good photo. That's another good photo. So sometimes it really shines. It comes through, it pulls through with a really excellent photo, and it seems like it succeeds in things that are of the same color and are all getting the same lighting. So shade and sun being mixed doesn't succeed there, but it can take a picture of something dull and gray very well. The stop sign, that also looks pretty good. That's a really good looking photo. That's one of the few super solid ones. And I think this... No, look, it was a perfectly sunny day. You can see the clouds up there. But it looks like it's overcast because of how this camera doesn't portray colors. Great side-eye. Excellent side-eye here. But that's another dog burst. Big fan of the dog bursts. This one, the background blur, and I know that's from, like, moving the camera, but the background blur actually looks very good. And then down here, I think we have some videos. Yes, we do. So these are some of those audio time lapses that I did for the concert. So the way it does those pictures with sound is very funny. It actually records at 10 frames per second, 8 kilohertz audio sample rate, one channel. 320 by 240. So I don't know why it doesn't just create an MP3. Why does it do this whole video? So the audio time lapses are a pretty interesting little thing to do. So in conclusion of its photos, sometimes it looks great, sometimes it doesn't, and that's pretty unfortunate. I really would love something like this to succeed because it's just so bizarre. But sadly, its photo quality just does not hold up to other cameras of the time. And I would have a feeling it's because of the lens and sensor being so tiny, because most of the body is taken up by the SuperDisk. But let's get back to me in real life, in real time, where you can see me, and I'll keep talking at you. Now, before we wrap up, I want to talk about the build quality, because it is fantastic. Now, this was an extremely expensive camera. I think this was like $2,000, not adjusted. But this is all metal. Of course, not the back is. The back is plastic. But all of this is all metal. That contributes to its remarkable weight. Of course, there you have the two little sensors for depth, for autofocus. But this is built fantastically. I mean, this has held together better than any of my other old cameras, or old AV gear in general. So, you know, good gear just doesn't die. That's really true across the whole AV industry. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you didn't hate the mini DV camera. Let me know if you did so I can stop using it if the feedback is universally negative. But I really enjoyed taking a look at this little camera. I hope you did as well, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching.